Welcome once again to another Olympic break edition of Get Me The Brandy. I'm Dan Potash, and I'm joined by my good friend and fellow colleague, the voice of the Pittsburgh Penguins, Josh Getzoff. We've got an excellent show coming up for this week. Excellent because we are joined, or will shortly be joined, by the old 2-9er. And not just to talk about the current Penguins, we'll crank back the clock and talk about his career from, well, more or less, start to finish as a professional hockey player and also as a professional hockey broadcaster. That's coming up in our next segment. But Josh, let's talk about, well, the Olympic break. And I know you've got to rest the pipes because we've got a lot of interesting hockey still to come for the Penguinis. But how have you been able to relax with your beautiful family?
I've enjoyed it. We were down in Florida. We went to the Florida Keys, which has kind of become a bit of a tradition for us, Stan, during whether it's the bye week or the Four Nations last year and this year, a little more time with the Olympics. Not saying I like the random stoppage in the middle of the season, but it's never a bad thing to be in the sun. When the day we left Pittsburgh, it was 4 degrees. So it's been nice to be in Florida, and at the same time, I think after those handful of days where you reset, you recharge, I'm sure the players feel it even more so. It's you kind of crave that rhythm again, and that intensity that comes with the season. So I know we're looking forward to get back at it. What about you, Dan? Anything fun during the break?
My wife Heidi and I talked about venturing to Florida, which we did last year during the Four Nations break. We were in Key Largo, and you were below us, if you will, in the Florida Keys. However, as you mentioned, as everyone knows here in Western PA, we had one heck of a winter as it pertains to snow, the amount of snow, ice, and frigid temperatures in and around zero for an extended period of time. And that left its mark on the Potash household, in particular, the walls, which have received some damage. So instead of getting away, we are having repairs done during this break. Not ideal, but could have been much worse. However, we're getting it taken care of, and soon we'll be back to normal. So maybe we will take our little break well after the Penguins' long run in the postseason sometime this summer, right? Yeah.
Hey, yeah, that's what we want.
That would be nice, but that's okay because I still got a chance to take it easy, relax a little bit. I've been going to practice the first practice for the guys back here in town, except for the Olympians. So still another week to go before we get back to work. But as we will find out by talking to the old 2-9er, that it could be a lot of fun to watch what this team has in store for us on the other side of the break. Coming up next, we will sit down with the old 2-9er, Phil Bourque, here on Get Me The Brandy.
The Penguins charity game on SportsNet Pittsburgh is returning for the 15th straight season. On Thursday, February 26th, tune in to purchase this legendary retro-inspired Penguins charity canvas duffel bag, which draws inspiration from the bold new 2025-26 third jersey. The Penguins gold is reminiscent of Mario Lemieux and the Penguins of the 1980s. The Penguins word mark is displayed on the carrying strap, and the zipper pulls are color coordinated by bag level. 3 bag tiers will be available once again, featuring various items honoring iconic players, management, and moments in Pittsburgh Penguins history. Proceeds help the missions of both the Penguins Foundation and Mario Lemieux Foundation. To see a complete list of the items available in each Penguins charity bag, log on to pittsburghpenguinsfoundation.org/charity game preview or scan the QR code on our screen.
Josh, nothing against you at all, but you simply can't have good hockey talk unless you have the old 2-9er join us on the vodcast. And guess what? Just like that, just like a slap shot, the old 2-9er Phil Bourque of the Penguins radio and television network on SNP joined us. Bourque, what's up, buddy?
I'm well. This is therapeutic for me. I need this, guys. I need it in my veins. I do. We're not used to taking breaks middle of the season. And, if we get the All-Star break and we get a few days off, okay, great. Reintroduce ourselves to the family. Remember me? I'm your dad. And then we go back into the grind of the season. But this 3 weeks off is nuts. It's nuts for me. I'm a hockey junkie. I can't get enough on TV. So thank you, Dan. Thank you, Josh. Good to be with you boys.
I thought this
Yeah,
would be a
I
cool
agree with you
opportunity.
guys.
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say I agree with you guys. It's been fun, right, to watch Olympic hockey, but it's also kind of been torturous to not have the Penguins games when they were rolling right along and there was a lot to be excited about. So this at least reignites that. So I'm on board with Borky for this.
And don't you worry, Josh. A very busy March is just around the corner to make up for this little break. We'll be on the
Good.
run like crazy. I thought it would be cool to, since we have the old team outer with us, to kind of go back in time a little bit. And Phil, not just to discuss your time on the ice with the Penguins from start to more or less the latter part of your career, almost to finish, but also your career in broadcasting. So let's turn the clock back to the early '80s when we all had business in the front and party in the back. Your first season with the Penguins back in '82, '83, and you're kind of working your way up from the Baltimore Skipjacks and trying to get a cup of coffee in the NHL. What was that real NHL or first real pro hockey moment where you were like, okay, hey, I'm here. This is the opportunity of a lifetime for me to live out a dream.
Well, as you know, Dan and Josh, you've heard my story before, and it's just who I am, man. I don't do anything the easy way. I'm kind of like the Penguins, right? And that makes you appreciate it a lot more. As a kid growing up outside of Boston, all I wanted to do was play pro hockey. That's all I wanted. And you think about back in the '80s, I don't even know if 10% of the league was American-born players. It was that low. But I was gonna find a way to get there, and to not be drafted, to go up and play junior hockey up in Canada and not be drafted. I had no plan B, boys. My plan B was out the window as far as playing college hockey, because when you play junior hockey, you actually get a stipend, which is monetary, and you are considered a professional, even though it's $80 a week. And even that, you can't even support Dan Potash's habits at Starbucks on $80 a week. So, I thank God to this day. And I think about it randomly. I got 2 phone calls. One was from my hometown Boston Bruins, their head scout, and the other one was from the Pittsburgh Penguins and their head scout. And it was both the same conversations of, hey, no, you didn't get drafted. We have a couple spots for tryouts. We can give you a couple nights in the hotel, some meal money, and see what you can do. So this is a long-winded answer to your short question, Dan, but my moment wasn't, actually going to training camp and seeing other NHL players and being around, the likes of, Rick Kehoe and Randy Carlyle and all those greats from the early '80s, or to even get a 2-way contract through Baz Bastine, the general manager. That first year, I spent the whole year in Baltimore. It was, to say the least, uneventful. I was just kind of trying to find my way into pro hockey. But the next year, I realized, wow, this is how hard you have to work to condition your body to be an NHL player. I made the team out of training camp. I played game number 1 of the regular season with the big club. So for me, that's probably the answer. For me, as a second-year professional, non-drafted player, undrafted player, to make the team out of camp your second year, I'll hang my hat on that and say that was one of those wow moments for me of, you feel like you've made it, but also feel like, okay, I'm on the way. I'm on the path to maybe a long career.
And you had a great career, Borky. Obviously, we know the 2 Stanley Cups to your name on some of the most legendary Penguins teams to ever play in Pittsburgh. But one guy that we have to ask you about, that you've talked a lot about as well, is the big man. And I'm not talking about the guy that sits next to Dan on the desk every single night on the pre- and post-game shows, all due respect to Jay Caulfield, the big man, Mario Lemieux. Because for a lot of people, like I know for myself, when I first met Mario, he's already a Stanley Cup champion. He's already a gold medalist. He's this legendary, greater than real life figure. You first met him when he was 18. What's it been like to see the man evolve, and what was your first impression of this kid when he joined the Penguins fray?
You're right. I'm 63 years of age, Josh, and I can't believe I still say this. That you bring his name up, and I still get kind of itchy butt in the seat a little bit. I'm just never comfortable around him, because of just who he is. And I'm not somebody that gets starstruck. It doesn't matter, whether it's a singer or an actor or a business person, I'm not overwhelmed by that, but I get overwhelmed by Mario. But I do remember that first training camp in 1984. We all heard like, oh, this young French Canadian kid, he's just unbelievable, first overall pick, yada yada yada. But again, I'm trying to find my way. And I was playing defense at the time, and a training camp was at the rink that's still there at Mount Lebanon High School. I remember this like it was yesterday, and I thought, I'm going to make my mark. I'm going to line this kid up, and I'm going to nail him, and I'm going to send him on his wallet, and everybody's going to be like, who's this Bourque kid? And so I remember I had him all lined up at center ice. He kind of had his head down, and I was going to clock him. I was going to pop him right in the chest, just like my dad taught me to throw a body check. And I went to throw that check and throw the shoulder. He came at me full speed, boom, pulled a 360. I went face first onto the ice. He was gone the other way and went top cheese on the backhand. And I remember oh boy, that's a little bit different. I'm not going to do that again. But really, when I think about, the whole story, Josh, from being a teammate, which was great, to a lot of times being a line mate with him, because it was really myself, Bob Erie, and Kevin Stevens were the three left wingers in the early 90s. That's not taking anything away from Troy Loney, but Troy was as slow as molasses, and he wasn't going to play with Mario. Kidding, Troy, I love you. But I did get in that rotation to play with Mario, and I understood early on, just go to the net and lean on your stick, and he'll put it on your tape. And it's never a bad pass to a great player. And so I realized those things very quick. And to this day, I think I can pick up the phone and call him if I needed something. It's not something I do. We don't go out and drink, $1,000 bottles of wine like he does with all his other buddies. But, I think I like to consider myself one of his friends. And if I did call him up and say, hey, I'd like to have a $20 bottle of wine, he'd be more than happy to share.
So while you were learning some lessons from Mario as a player, Phil, I'm just curious, when you think of, and maybe back in the early 80s, when you think of minor league hockey, a movie that came out just a few years before, Slapshot, may have come to mind and given people an image of what it was like down below in the National Hockey League. So what lessons did you learn from your time playing in the minors that helped you stick with the Penguins?
Well, a couple things. Two things I did. During the playing times, I'm going to be honest with you. You know me. I'm an open book. My first few years, I had fun. I had a lot of fun. I had too much fun. I was living La Vida Loca. I was living the life. I was making 22.5. I was driving a brand new Corvette, and I was living the life. And I look back on it now. I'm like, what was I thinking? But I was just this kind of I don't know, I need to spread my wings, and I need to sow my oats, and I did all that in a bag of chips, right? And I learned that I didn't want to ride the buses anymore, that I got sick and tired of stepping over, old pizza boxes and stale beer on the bus on those 12-hour bus trips. I got tired of it because when I came up to the NHL and my per diem was 5 times more than it was in the American Hockey League, and we're flying on planes everywhere, and we're staying in beautiful hotels, I went, this is what I want to do. But I wasn't really sure, how do I get from there to there? And so, Gene Ubriaco, I've said this name many times. He wasn't a longtime Penguins head coach, but he's meaningful to me because for some reason, he saw something in me, and he would pull me aside and teach me about my practice habits, my eating habits, my workouts, all those things about being a better person, being a better citizen, being a better teammate. And so he really helped me kind of mold me and kind of say, don't go in that direction, Bourque. Go in this direction over here. You know what else I did, Dan? And it wasn't as much during the season, but I started working the most awful jobs you could ever work in the off season. I worked as a laborer for a bricklayer. I worked on a blacktop crew. I worked on a construction crew. I worked on the crappiest jobs that pay good money because, there's not a lot of people that want to do them, but I wanted to be in the most miserable situation I could be in. Also, that it would be physical, so it would be a built-in workout, but I kept reminding myself every time I'd wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning to be on the job site at 7 a.m. and hate the job I was at, make sure you're good at hockey. so you don't come back and have to do this type of job the rest of your life. And so that's, in a kind of sick way, I would almost punish myself in the off season with these jobs, because again, I'm making 22.5. I had to work in the off season just to support my crazy habits that I had at the time, right? But I would make sure they were built-in workouts and just the most miserable job to get me in shape, but also remind me, hey, this hockey thing, it's a pretty good thing. You might want to try to do it for a long career.
And you took a big step in that career, Bourque, in the 88-89 season. The first, you mentioned making the team out of camp prior, but that was your first full year in the National Hockey League. I'm curious, we've heard so much about your story, the people you've come across with, but for you personally, staying in Pittsburgh that year, you talked about these odd jobs you did, riding the buses and everything. I know in the moment, like any athlete, it's probably hard to sit there and say, oh, I'm here, I'm in it, I'm doing this. But what did that mean to you that year when you look back on just how your career evolved to make it and stick throughout the entire year for the first time in your career?
Just the first thing that comes to mind is I earned it. I paid the toll. I paid the price. I paid the ultimate price, that I gave up everything in the off season. And, whether it was, living in a one-bedroom house on a lake in the off season so that I could run around the lake, bike around the lake, swim across the lake at 5 o'clock in the morning before any boats were out on the lake. I was doing all those things. So I found out what the toll was. And then I looked myself in the mirror and said, are you willing to pay that price? And when the answer was yes, I did it. So to me, it was a culmination of all those things that I did, that even though I was a good skater, I went to a guy named Paul Vincent, who was a power skating coach. And I tried to even get a better, more powerful stride to get to that next level. So, some people will say, I'll do anything to play in the National Hockey League. There were those summers, Josh, when I actually did. I did everything you could possibly do to be an NHL player, and it paid off.
How about that season in which the Penguins got back in the playoffs for the first time with Mario Lemieux? And I think that was your first full season in the league in 88-89.
That's what it was, yeah.
What did it mean to reach that point? Not only to get a full tenure, if you will, season in the National Hockey League, but then to make it to the second season, which was not only your first experience, but I more or less the whole team as far as youth is concerned, including Mario.
Yeah, that's where we went from kind of a slow burn with Mario just getting into the league and him putting up these huge numbers to, again, those first few years from 84 when he joined the National Hockey League to 88, the 88-89, so really the 89 playoffs. There was no playoffs in between there. So that 88-89 season was the first taste for a lot of us. And I tell you, a big help in that was when Paul Coffey got traded to the Penguins. He had come from the Edmonton Oilers, and he kind of showed us and he taught us, and even Mario, what it was to win. Also, the Canada Cup, when Mario went in 87 to play for Team Canada and for them to win that tournament, that changed Mario because he got to play with the greats, and he was able to taste what victory was at the professional level because he had never had that before. And so all those things kind of brought us all into a winning mentality. So, Dan, the short answer is it was huge because it also, for the first time in a really long time, gave Penguin fans, really a whole generation of fans, had missed the playoffs. And so now with Mario on board and some good players around him, they got the taste of it. And so the excitement in the city, to just be around when, the dogwoods were blooming and the city was abuzz and baseball was just starting and the Penguins are in the playoffs, like, holy smokes, what is going on here? The city was on fire. It was an unbelievable moment and time in a lot of our lives because we had never experienced it before. And to beat the New York Rangers in that first round, unfortunately, we lost to Philadelphia in the second round, and we really thought we had that one in the bag. That still burns me to this day. But it gave us a taste. And even though we missed the playoffs the next year, we still had that taste from 88, 89 that we needed to get back there again because we had a little taste of it. We knew what it took. We didn't do it the next year, and we couldn't wait to get back again which, as you know, what happened in 1991.
Yeah, oh yeah. Drafted some kid out of the Czechoslovakia, I guess, at the time, who had an unbelievable mullet, by the way. And
Oh yeah.
then the 91 season comes along, Borky. And I'm curious, we wanted to ask you a little bit about just that year in general, but also the couple final steps to get to the finish line. Because you mentioned when you were looking for a contract, two teams called you. It was the Penguins and then your hometown Boston Bruins. And lo and behold,
Yeah.
in the conference final, you go head to head with the Boston Bruins that year.
Yeah.
What was that like for you to go toe to toe with that team in Boston Garden, being a kid from Chelmsford, and then obviously coming out on top in that moment?
Yeah, the ironic thing, Josh, is both of those series in 91 and 92, when we played the Boston Bruins, were conference finals. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I might have a different answer for you if it was the first round, where you kind of have the jitters a little bit, the nerves a little bit more. You're not really, you know how first rounds go, right? You can easily get knocked out in the first round if you're just not ready to go. But by the third round, by the conference final, you're frothing at the mouth. And so for me personally, I got over the whole Boston Garden, Spoke B, family and friends at the game, playoffs in my hometown. I got over that really, really quick because I knew what was on the other side of that series, and that was the Stanley Cup final. And so, again, some of my family members probably still dislike me because there was no phone calls answered. There was no ticket buying. There was nothing. I shut everything out because that's what I had to do. I had to dial in. I think some my family members understood it. Other ones were kind of chafed by it, but I was all in. I was all in. So the whole thing of playing the Bruins, in the back of my mind, I was fist pumping. I was like, yeah, this is awesome. But majority of me was pretty buttoned up wanting to win.
So, of course, as history moved forward or time moved forward, you started to check the box on 16 victories. So let's go ahead and get to the Stanley Cup final. In Game 6, obviously with an opportunity to wrap things up, you go up 3-0 in the first period. So if you had butterflies before the game, what are you feeling then? And was it hard to stay focused on like, hey, we're up big here? I mean, what was the mindset like going into the room and talking about it before you came out for the second?
No. Dan, that's a great question. It is because you can let your mind wander, right? But you personally know some of the cast of characters, and they were a whole bunch of alpha dogs, right? There weren't any softies on that team, and so we were brutal with each other, but in a healthy way. If that makes any sense at all, the way we would talk to each other, and we would just be hard on each other and remind each other, "Hey, boys, put the boots to them, take them down, finish them off." Like there was a lot of that going on, and we wouldn't allow ourselves to take the foot off the gas pedal. We end up winning 8-0. I've told this story before. I don't get tired of telling it. I remember it was about 2.5 minutes to go. I'm sitting on the bench next to Mark Recchi, one of my dear, dear friends, one of my favorites, if not my favorite teammate of all time. And I looked up at the clock and I saw 8-0, 2.5 minutes to go. I remember I told myself, I think you're okay. I think we're okay. I think we're going to win the cup. And I leaned over to Mark Recchi and I go, "Hey, Rex, we're going to win the blanking cup. I'm sure you can fill in the blank, Dan." And that's when we kind of always started jumping up and down like 8-year-old little peewees that just won a tournament, down the street. We became kids again. And so, there was a lot of emotion. And when you're staying so on edge for 7-8 weeks, and then you look up at that clock and you see 8-0, a lot of emotions come pouring out of you.
That's odd. I mean, you get chills just hearing that story again, Borky, with that little conversation with Rex on the bench and imagining what you guys were thinking in that moment. And you were lucky enough to do it 2 years in a row. I mean, you talk about Pittsburgh having some hard luck on hockey until the Lemieux era and your guys' teams rolled around. All of a sudden, it was championship city come NHL teams with the back-to-back championships. When you look back on those 2 years, this is probably an answer that deserves way more time than's allotted on this podcast. But what do you think of when you think of the championship memories? Because we see the videos, but you were there. You lived the hard moments in those seasons, the passing of Badger, Bob, all the different twists and turns those 2 years took in particular that still resulted in you guys winning the cup back-to-back years.
Yeah, nothing was easy, Josh. Nothing was easy. That's what I think of. And that's what made it. That's why, like I get choked up sometimes when you lay it out there like that, you son of a gun. You stir the emotions inside me, I'm an emotional person and I love to win. I love being a part of the Penguins organization. It is everything to me. Everything I have in my life, really. I look back, it's because of the Pittsburgh Penguins, and I know my birth certificate doesn't say it, but I feel like I was born in this town. I just love everything about what this city stands for. And so, you know, I think about the friendships. I think about how hard we pushed each other. I think about, Badger Bob passing away in November after we win the cup in May. What are we talking 5, 6 months later? Badger Bob passes away from, you know, um, brain cancer. And I think of Mario and what he went through with his back, and Mario with a broken hand in '92, and Joey Mullen getting laid out by Chris King in 1992. And I think of this young kid with an ass the size of Rhode Island, Jaromir Jagr, exploding onto the scene and what he did. I mean, all those things, and my relationship with Bob Erie and Randy Gillen, and how we would drive to the rink together and we'd say the same stupid jokes because it would help us get our minds locked in, and just the pit that I would have in my stomach before every playoff game, and the nerves, and I would hate it, but I'd also love it at the same time. You're almost on the edge of being sick to your stomach, but you're like, yeah, I need to feel this way to play good. I mean, all those things you don't get anywhere else in life. You don't get that in any other job, to feel these things, and be willing to get punched in the face and block a shot with your face and to throw yourself in front of harm's way in those playoff games, not only for your brother, for your teammate, but for your family, for your city, for that crest, for everything. You don't get those emotions in anything else you do in life. But we had it there for those 2 years, and so those are the things that I remember the most.
Real quickly, before I get to my next question, you mentioned the backside of Jaromir Jagr. I'm just curious. When he did reach for his wallet, did he go like this? Because it was so big that it was easier to get it this way than reaching around the other side?
Is what, 19 years old, 20 years old, whatever he was. I don't even think he didn't have a wallet, Dan, because he was such a rock star in the city at the time. I don't think he paid for anything, including all the speeding tickets he used to get.
You're probably right. And if he needed any loose change, he'd pull it out of the mullet.
Yeah, out of the mullet. Just shake the mullet. Yeah, you got everything but the kitchen sink in there.
The Penguins charity game on SportsNet Pittsburgh is returning for the 15th straight season. On Thursday, February 26th, tune in to purchase this year's retro canvas charity duffel bag, which draws inspiration from the bold new 2025-26 Penguins third jersey and features items honoring Penguins legends, both past and present. You can also level up your Penguins collection, as each black charity bag contains an authenticated 8x10 autographed photo by either Mario Lemieux or a member of the Penguins 2025-26 roster. Proceeds will benefit the Penguins Foundation and the Mario Lemieux Foundation. Save the date for February 26th for the 15th annual Penguins charity game on SportsNet Pittsburgh.
I mentioned when we first brought you in that we were going to not only talk about your playing career, but your broadcasting career. So you continued to play in the NHL for several years after your tenure with the Penguins, went to Europe for a short while, decided to call it quits. Most players don't think about entering the career of broadcasting until they're done and the network or a radio station comes calling. Hey, we think that you'd be a good fit for X, Y, and Z. That wasn't the case for you. You had caught the bug for broadcasting many years before, right? Because I asked you about this when we first met, and I loved your answer.
It came in the mid '80s when DVE Morning Show came calling to the Penguins, and they had Merrill Hodge representing the Steelers at the time as their morning guest, and they wanted a Penguin. So they came to me and said, hey, we got this pretty cool morning show. They're pretty popular. They have a Steeler. They want a Penguin. You'd be interested. And I'm like, okay. They're like, they want you to come in studio. I'm like, okay. So I got up early, went to the studio in Green Tree, and went on DVE. And I was like, wow, I just had a blast. I had so much fun. That was like, hey, can I come back and do this again? They're like, you want to? I'm like, yeah. They're like, okay. So I just kept doing that. And that was kind of the first thing I did kind of media wise that kind of gave me the bug. And I found myself just searching out anything that was related to that because I thought of it as training. I thought of it as a way to kind of build relationships and understand how it works and understand what a camera is and what it does and the microphone and how this whole interview and just kind of embrace all that. And I wanted more and more and more. But yeah, I don't know if this is stealing your thunder to fast forward. I was over in Germany and I got a call from Fox Sports at the time, and they said, we're making a move on the color side on the TV. Would you be interested? I said, hell yeah, I'm interested. So I interviewed. It was Paul Kasuth, if you remember that name, Dan. And
PK.
he's the guy that interviewed me. And he said, hey, we're interviewing one more guy. It's kind of down to you and the other guy. I'm like, okay, great. Just let me know. I just retired, 18 years professional. I kind of felt comfortable where I was in my life. And it ended up being Eddie Olczyk was the other guy who had more experience than me. And they hired Edzo. And so I was like, okay, well, I'll get another job. No problem. And I decided to take a year off and just kind of have some fun and then exhale, and I'll get right back into it, and I'll find a job in broadcasting, right? Well, 1 year turned into 3 years, and I couldn't find a job. And I was coming back and doing some kind of inside Penguins hockey stuff and some other stuff with, whether it was Root at the time, it was still Fox Sports. And again, just trying to find my way. And there just wasn't any jobs available. And so that's when I actually picked up the phone and called Mario and just was like, because that 1 year turned into 3 years. I couldn't find a job. I don't care who you are. You go 3 years without a paycheck. It was the most humbling time of my life. And I met Mario up at Nevillewood Country Club after a round of golf. And I just said, hey, man, I need a job. I need some help here. He said, stay by your phone. I was living in Boston at the time, but coming back to Pittsburgh. He said, get back to Pittsburgh as much as you can. Get your face, get your name out there, start networking and stay by the phone. And that's when they made that change where Eddie Olczyk went from TV to behind the bench. How nuts is that, right? Bob Erie went from radio to TV, and I split it on the radio job. And that was 2003, my first game. I worked with Paul Steigerwald on the radio side. My first game was Marc-Andre Fleury's first game in 2003. And the rest is kind of history. And people have asked me before, hey, do you ever feel like getting into coaching or anything like that? I love what I do. And you guys, I think you guys know it. I've worked with both of you guys a long time. I absolutely love what I do. I don't have this burning desire to do anything else right now. But I'm so grateful that I picked up that phone and called Mario, and so grateful that he said, yeah, meet me for lunch, because I have no idea what direction I was going at that time in those early 2000s. And he kind of extended the hand once again and kind of saved me and got me on my way.
That's unbelievable. And yeah, I mean, it's cool to see, like, you see where you are now, Bourque, but it's really fun to relive that path and see the stops. And I know there's been a lot of people that you've worked with, whether it's as teammates on the ice or teammates in the booth, and there's no one that's better than Mike Lange. And that, of course, is who you were with for over a dozen years after you had your time with Staggy. I think it's appropriate that we're talking about and asking you about him now, because I'm sure you guys are aware the 19th of February is the 1 year anniversary of his passing, unfortunately. We miss him every day, but Bourque, I'm just wondering, when you think back, and I'm sure this is again, I don't mean to be asking the questions to pull the heartstrings here. We all kind of feel it as I'm trying to ask it to you, but when you think about just his influence on you when you're in the booth every night, and how you've grown as a broadcaster, one, I guess, what was that experience like being alongside the greatest to ever do it? And two, what'd you gain? What'd you learn? Who'd you become?
Yeah. No, I'm glad you brought that up. In fact, we're taping this right before that, the 19th. And so it's been on my mind for a while. For the last 2 days, I find myself all day long just thinking about him, knowing that, damn, it's been a year. It's gone by quick, but it hasn't gone by that quick, because I know both of you very, very tight. I know, Dan, your relationship with him was unique, really, really unique. You bust each
Yeah.
other's cookies like I've never seen before. And Josh, you know how he felt about you. It was almost like you and Badger Bob, right? The way he put his arm around you almost, and
I know.
so
Yeah.
yeah, we miss him. We miss him like I can't even put into words as I kind of struggle through this answer. But to get to the point, get to your question, he taught me so much, and I remember when he first tried to teach me some things, it didn't go over that well. I kind of felt like, he's kind of like, Bourque, like don't do that, like, you know what I mean, like he's kind of disciplining me, and I think he sensed my reaction to that, and so he would try different ways, just be like, hey Bourque, like, when you said that at that time, like just wait that second there and let me, and it was just this, and then it became, hey Bourque, let's go for a beer. Hey Bourque, meet me at this place. I got this blues singer's playing tonight. Come hang out for a while. And so that was Mikey's way of saying, let's come together here. Let's form a partnership. Let's form a bond. Let's form a marriage outside the booth that we can take into the booth. And so when that light goes on and that puck gets dropped, we've already worked out the stuff over Miller Lights. I mean, we've already talked all this stuff out where now you understand me better, I understand you better. And I know him and Edzo had that relationship. And I think it took a while. I'll be honest with you. People say, oh, you and Mikey were great together. We weren't great right away. We didn't figure each other out. I was stepping all over him, and he was on top of me, and it just wasn't working until we started to form that relationship outside the booth. And that's when we came together. And that's when he taught me about the volume of my voice, because I used to be a yeller and a screamer, and I'd peg the needle, and he's taking his headset off during the game because I'm just too excited. It's good to be excited, but he said, your voice doesn't have to be screaming and yelling. So he taught me to use my voice as an instrument, and the inflection and the way you say words. And I've told you this before, and I'm going to tell you guys again, because it's the best thing that Mikey taught me. He said, hey, just one day, have the Miller Lite. He goes, hey, Bourque, do you know there's blind people and shut-ins that listen to our games? I'm like, no, what are you talking about? He goes, yeah, there's people, they're blind, and they put the radio on, and they just sit in the room, and they expect you and I to paint the picture and put them in the arena. Nothing else that he told me sunk in more than that's your job, is to use your voice and take a blind person and put them into the PPG Paints arena and open their eyes so they can see exactly what is happening that just happened. And I try to do that every single time that I analyze a goal after your call, Josh, or Joe's call, whoever I'm working with, and to let that breathe a little bit, and then try to describe in as great a detail as you can to a blind person what they just saw. And so that's some of the best advice I ever got from Mike Lange.
With all that time that you spent with him, not only as a player when he was calling games, and then sitting by his side for all the time that you did calling the same sport, is there a story away from the ice that comes to mind that you could share? And you're right. Mike and I had some phenomenal heavyweight bouts with Northern California versus Southern California. And I'm just scraping, barely touching it there. It goes well beyond, I could tell you a couple of hours worth of stories that happened away from the rink. Is there one that sticks out for you that you'll always remember and kind of maybe still laugh about today?
Probably two things that come to my mind. I don't know if these are great answers, but I'll say them anyways. Number one is in 2016, right, Josh? Correct me if I'm wrong here. 2016 beat Tampa, conference final, game 7.
Yep.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, when you play game 7 on the road, the team just tells you we're staying over. You don't know if you're going to go into multiple overtimes. And so the game is over, and we're standing outside the bus, and you know where this is in Tampa, guys, at the loading dock there. And Mikey says, he's just shaking his head. He's like, Bourque, we need to go have one somewhere. I'm like, okay. And he wanted to go place to where he could have a drink and have a dart, right? And so I said, what about the casino, Mikey? He's like, get the Uber. Let's go. So we go to the Hard Rock Casino in Tampa, and I'll never forget it. It's one of my most memorable moments. it was almost like everything else kind of cleared out. It was just me and Mikey and two bar stools and two Miller Lights. And I remember him just kind of shaking his head when we got our beers and we poured our beers, and he's just shaking his head like this. And I'm like, Mikey, what's up? What's going on? He's like, can you believe we're going to do this again? Can you believe we're going to the Stanley Cup finally? And there was just so much joy in his heart to think not once, not twice, not three, but now for the fourth time, actually the fifth time when you think of 2008 also, right? But really,
Right.
he's going back again. Where Mikey, I think at that point thought, I don't know how many more years I have in me, but this is going to be a ride that I'm going to completely enjoy and embrace. And I remember just sitting there with him and going, Bourque, don't forget any of this moment right here. This is so special and so unique, and how much he was just so happy, and you didn't see Mikey that kind of happiness very often, He was kind of curmudgeon-y, right? He kind of had a furl and a bit of a furrowed brow all the time, a bit of a bad mood all the time, but he liked being that way. But also the pride that he had in his son Tanner, and Tanner was in the military, and he was all over the world, and the times I'd ask him, hey, you heard from Tanner? He's like, yeah, all I know is he's in Japan. He can't tell me anything else, and so I just know that it kind of hurt him in his heart a little bit, and that he spent so much time away from Tanner, dedicating him so much to the job that he had of being the Penguins broadcaster, the voice of the Penguins, that there was so much pride and so much love that he had for his son Tanner, that I remember those conversations when I didn't have any kids, to hear those conversations that I had with Mikey where he let me in, that he didn't let many people know about his family, to let me in and know, how much love he had for his son Tanner. That meant a lot to me. It was another level of connection that we had.
Yeah, that was that was something I feel like anybody who Mikey really got close with. You heard so much about Tanner and then his grandson Owen, and how proud he was of both of them later in his life. But one thing that's really interesting with Mikey, much like with you, as far as the broadcast angle, is you're talking about generational talents. You played with one, or played with a couple, honestly, and now you broadcast a few. And Mikey's broadcast all of them. Talk about those back-to-back cups in 91 and 92. The best shots that everyone has etched in their memory are when Mario accepts the cup and you guys are all around him and he hoists it for the first time. And then, of course, in 16 and 17, Sidney Crosby accepts the cup and hoists it for the first time, or not the first time for him, this second and third time, but first time since 2009 with him as the captain. So my question in that long-winded just lead-in is, and obviously we look at Sid right now as we were talking today. Who knows what his status is? We're holding our breath. We're burning sage. We're doing whatever we're doing after his injury in the quarterfinals for Canada. But could you have ever imagined that a guy like Sidney Crosby would come along after a guy like Mario Lemieux had come along in the same organization at seemingly the perfect time in both situations?
No. Why us, right? I say that all the time. We're this little town in southwestern Pennsylvania. Like, why us, right? It's one thing just to have Mario, but then to have, whether it's Yager or Ronnie or Koff or Rex or, the list goes on. And now, with Tanger and Gino and Sid, but to get to Sid, no, never in my wildest dreams would I think another one would come along that could have so much impact on the city and the organization and not want to leave no matter what was offered. And that's the kind of the sandals that both Sid and Mario walked down, right? That there's an undying love and a commitment and a loyalty to the city and understand what it means to be a Pittsburgh Penguin and lead by example. And talk is cheap. They're not big talkers, but they just do the right thing all the time. They're inspirations for me all the time, even as a 60-some-year-old guy that every single day tries to do what's right and wrong in your life, that remind yourself, what would Sid do? What would Mario do in these situations? And it's just the right thing. And, I don't think they live boring lives. I think they understand that I can't go out and do as much fun stuff as every other guy can do just because of who I am. But also I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that because it keeps me on the straight and narrow, and I continue to paint the right picture of who I am, what I represent, and what it's like to be a Pittsburgh Penguin. And that undying loyalty and commitment is so rare in sports, especially now. Maybe 30 years ago when Mario played, 35 years ago, but now as we get into 2026 here, you're seeing athletes jump all over the place and ridiculous amounts of dollars thrown at them. That doesn't matter for Sid. Sid's all about doing the right thing, and that right thing is representing the Pittsburgh Penguins and the city of Pittsburgh.
Bourque, I want to stay with Sid for a moment, but add to it because this season's been special for a number of reasons when it comes to the big three. And I'm talking about Sidney, Evgeny Malkin, Chris Letang. We've celebrated them being together for 2 decades and having won championships and so many special moments in Penguins history. As the Penguins now get ready for the final 20 plus games of the season, they find themselves in great position as far as the postseason is concerned. What is it meant, do you feel as a former player, to have those 3 figures in the room with some of the younger players, the new blood, the guys that are going to continue to make this team special for many years to come after the big 3 takes a seat and says, we've had enough?
I think if you asked me this question 5 years ago, I'd probably have a little bit more of a not as glowing an answer, because I'd say, yeah, it's been great, Dan, but I'm not sure what the future holds. You know what I mean? I'm not sure when these guys say, that's it. I'm a little uneasy. I have a different answer now. That I think that because those 3 have found a way to elevate their game, we knew Sid would. But I'm so proud of the way that Gino's been playing this year, and even Tanger, the absolute warrior that he is back there. I think they have again shown that next level of legitimate NHL players, not just good AHL minor league guys, not first and second round picks that we hope are going to be good. No, we clearly see that there is a bunch of players, not just 1 or 2, a bunch of players that are legit NHL players. Are they going to be rock stars and superstars? Who knows, right? There's only so many Sidney Crosbys and Mario Lemieux. But when you look at the draft picks just from this year and what's in the pipeline now and how good Wilkes-Barre Scranton is, even how good Wheeling is right now, we're as healthy an organization as any 32 that's in the league. And so that gives you hope that the big 3 have really shown the way with their play in the weight room, the way they eat, the way they sleep, what they drink, everything they do. And again, how they go out into the city, and whether it's doing things when the camera's not on at Children's Hospital or whatever it might be, it's doing the right thing that their teammates are now watching and saying, wow, even at 39, even at 38, they don't take any shortcuts, whether it's on the ice or off the ice. And that is laying a foundation that I think will be here for many, many years.
It's true, Borky. I mean, I think when you think about the Penguins the last couple of years, we always would say, well, as long as they have Sid, Gino, and Tanger, but their reality was they weren't making the playoffs and they had Sid, Gino, and Tanger. But this year, they've added so many nice complementary pieces. Kyle Dubas is just, I mean, we've talked about it, home run after home run after home run. Those 3, to your point, are having awesome years. I mean, Sid's on pace, I think, for the best year ever by a 38-year-old or a 39-year-old in NHL history, which, I mean, we just make up the stats for him at this point as far as what he's doing on a nightly basis, or he creates a new category, I should say. But when you look at this year's team, it was a lot of fun going into that Olympic break. The only thing that stunk about the Olympic break is that the Penguins weren't playing because they were racking up points. They had beaten Buffalo in a huge win right before the break, a team right around them in the standings. When you look at this unofficial second half, which really amounts to less than 30 games until you hit the finish line, how do you forecast it? And obviously Sid's status is the biggest question mark, but this is a team that's put themselves in a position that, quite honestly, the last few years, we would have loved to even sniffed. Like, they are solidly in that second spot in the Metro when action resumes next week.
And to me, that's the key. I mean, just quickly to jump into player skates, I would be thinking stay on Carolina, stay on Carolina, stay on Carolina, and then everything behind you will take care of itself, right? Keep your sights set on Carolina, number one in the Metro, and then everything will work out. The other part, as an analyst, I think about the goaltending. Can the goaltending continue to be as rock solid as it's been? And will both these guys be here? Because they're both unrestricted free agents, right, Josh? Or
Yeah.
Archer Shilovs is a restricted free agent, right?
Yeah,
Skinner's
Artie's
unrestricted.
restricted.
Yep. Yeah. So, like the business side kind of comes into it, right? But I think what I'm seeing from this team, I was actually just thinking about this today. Because you're right. We're going to have 10 days from when we come back, or 10 days from now, right around now, until, the season starts, and then 9 days until the trade deadline.
Right.
How much do you tinker with this team? You know what I mean? Because you're around the guys. This is becoming a really tight-knit group. They're starting to really play for each other. So, people are talking about Anthony Mantha. People are talking about, other players, Nola Chari, do you move on from these guys? Or do you just say, you know what? If you guys keep playing like this, I'm willing to roll the dice and mortgage the future a little bit for the present. And so that's, for Kyle Dubas, I guess that's what you want, because you've done so much to this point. Would it be so bad if this team in those 17 games in March, Josh, in 31 days, if let's say they win 12 of them, and they're right 2 points behind Carolina come the deadline, do you pull that trigger, or do you say, you know what, they have made the decision for me? And I think ultimately that's what Kyle wants. He wants the team and those players that might feel like, I might be on the move, I want to stay here. If collectively and personally I can show the general manager that we can do something special here, you got to keep us together. I wouldn't be surprised if Kyle Dubas does that, because I don't think there's a blockbuster deal to be made out there. Everything is kind of smaller moving pieces, where you're making more lateral moves. And maybe you shouldn't make those lateral moves if this team becomes closer and closer and keeps on winning.
If anything at all, one of your signature phrases, I think, pertains to the post-hockey schedule for the Pittsburgh Penguins, or a post-Olympic schedule for the Pittsburgh Penguins. Buckle up, baby. It's going to be a lot of fun to see what this Penguin team can do down the stretch. Old 2-9er, look forward to getting back together with you and, of course, Josh Getzoff on the broadcast coming up as soon as February the 26th. Phil, always a pleasure.
Dan, Josh, enjoyed our time together. This was good hockey talk.
Oh, Lord Stanley, get me the brandy.